Welcome, folks, to Defender Fridays, where we every week we talk about Defender stuff, right? So we're going to be focusing usually on blue team. Sometimes we get on to the offensive topics and things like that, offensive security, not just generally offensive topics. And today we are joined again by Tom Cross. Tom, do you want to give us a little bit of an intro and maybe also talk a little bit about what we're going to be talking about today with the some of these deep fakes and like hiring? This is pretty
Yeah,
interesting
sure.
topic.
Thank you. I've been in cybersecurity for many decades. I used to run a little group at IBM called X-Force Research. We did a lot of vulnerability research and supported the development of a IPS product. And I also ran research for a while at Landcope, which is now Cisco Stealthwatch. I did a startup called Drawbridge Networks. I've been around for a while. I've certainly talked a number of times at DEF CON and Black Hat and the like. I've been on the Lima Charlie podcast, I guess this isn't a podcast. This is Defender Fridays, but I've been on here um, uh, earlier in the year. And back then I was a consultant. And subsequent to that, I got a new gig where I am now the head of threat research at a company called GetReal Security. And what we do at GetReal Security is we build deepfake detection technology. In particular, we build a product that hooks into video conference calls like this one, and analyzes the audio and video and can detect sort of artifacts or the signs that the audio or video has been AI manipulated. I think as we've gotten into like learning more and more about this threat, and understanding how threat actors are using it, and talking to like potential clients about what they're concerned about, our understanding of the problem has kind of broadened. A lot of people that we're talking to are specifically concerned about like basically candidate fraud. And so I'm sure you guys have heard over the past couple years, particularly North Korea has been able to infiltrate hundreds of organizations in North America by getting their people hired remotely. I'm someone who has worked remotely for a very, very long time, and I'm really accustomed to it. But it seems that like COVID kind of forced a lot of people to do it, and many of them sort of found that, hey, we can do this. It works. I didn't realize it would work, but it's working. And so nowadays, like a significant percentage of people's employees are like 100% remote. They may be in locations where it's just like not convenient to ever meet with them in person. And maybe you've hired somebody that you never talk to, right? Also organizations like increasingly have these like global footprints, right? And I think that has created this situation where companies are building these like working relationships with people that are only like through the screen. And Ultimately, that means that person is just a pattern of bits. The fact is that first of all, North Korea has definitely demonstrated that they can get hired in these situations, they can present false identities, they can get through a hiring process, they can get a job, they can be on your network, and often these people are presenting themselves like as themselves. They are who they appear to be. I think that they sometimes use deepfakes for to try to essentially hide, like, say, their accent. For example, there are some pretty big AI audio platforms that are used by call centers for accent modification, and they may use stuff like that so that they sound more Western as part of their process. But they usually are not hiding their identity. The concern is that they could, and so I think we've sort of gotten into a place where we're really focused not just on like deep fake detection, but also just sort of validation that like you're talking to the person that you think that you're talking to, and that person is real. I think that this technology is going to continue to improve. It's going to continue to get easier to use, and so this it's going to continually it's going to increasingly be the case that we have to question, the interactions that we're having through the screen. You guys don't really know who I am, for example.
Yeah, you could.
So
This could be a deep fake. You could be sitting in North Korea right now. We don't know.
I could be.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen a lot of the technology where, like the audio, things like that. I've seen situations where even before like the North Korea with the Lazarus group and things like that, where we've seen people like take tests for people like exams, and then someone shows up and it's not the actual person that did the all that stuff. We've seen that, but a lot of companies they say we'll never fall for that, but it seems like a lot of big names have.
Oh
Like
yeah.
maybe you can name a few examples.
Oh, can I name victims? I don't know if I can name victims. I'd have to
Yeah, we've
think
seen a few
about
in the
that.
media. I know,
Uh,
like Amazon, like they just did a recent. I
oh,
don't
that's
know.
right. Amazon did say that they caught one, right?
Yeah,
They caught them. How did they catch them? It had to do with keyboard latency. So that was
yeah.
an
I wasn't sure
interesting.
about that. I wasn't sure if that was like if that was misinformation or
Oh, no.
what. Like,
I mean, I don't think so. So one of the articles, I'm jumping way ahead here, but one of the articles that I was going to recommend, for people in this group, was put out by Splunk, and it was. Behind the curtain, detecting remote employment fraud inside your organization. And the reason I recommend it is because they're because it's Splunk. They're like focused on logs and like how can I like assess logs to detect these threats. And so, I'm sure everybody on this call has logs, whether or not they're using Splunk. Like Splunk's thoughts about how you can use logs to detect these threats are relevant, right? And you know, they one of the things they talk about is the bandwidth and latency on calls, and so it's actually different for each one of these platforms, but you can often get like performance statistics. And by assessing the performance statistics, you might be able to like detect unnatural or strange latency. So if I really was in North Korea, and particularly if I was joining this call from a computer in the United States that a facilitator had set up, and I was like routing my video to that computer from North Korea, and I had North Korean internet, which is not the best internet, I'm told. You would expect there to be a certain amount of lag and latency, and that lag and latency is maybe not perceptible to us as humans, but would definitely show up in the call statistics. And I think what Amazon was talking about is like keyboard latency, maybe with SSH, and so you're SSH'd into a host, and you just like there's this delay every single time someone's interacting, and it may be that if they didn't explain exactly what they were doing, but you could imagine that a certain amount of like keystroke interaction latency in SSH, even though it's encrypted, you might be able to tell that the user, the keyboard was really really far away, and if that was not sort of what was expected given the physical location that you thought that person was in, that might be an interesting indicator.
huh. Yeah, I wonder maybe if maybe they're going to modify their tactics once they're
Oh,
being detected. What happens when maybe they actually interview closer? Maybe they even come to the U.S. like on a tourist visa or something like that. Fake credentials, and they do the
well,
interview.
I think you're almost like you get to a place where you've defeated the purpose, right? Like I think that I mean, so for a very long time, there has been a situation where foreign intelligence agents would try to get jobs, in sensitive U.S. companies, and they would do that through a process of successfully emigrating here and getting the job, right? In person and actually working here. And there's a great deal of risk associated with that, of course, and a great deal of difficulty. And so the value of what they're getting has to be really, really high to like justify all of that effort. And I think that these remote jobs, the risk is lower, the effort is lower, and so consequently, they may do it in a context where the benefit is lower, right? They're not just going after people in the defense industrial base where they can collect secrets. Sometimes they're just getting an IT job for the salary, and the margin between their living expenses and what they're making in the U.S. Is enough that profit can go fund more intelligence collection and espionage activities by their government, right? And the other thing I want to say is that folks in DPRK are not necessarily coming from North Korea. They do travel to other countries. We've seen them come from China. We've seen them come from Laos. We've seen them come from places in Africa. So there are places that they will travel to, that they will work from, where it's the risk for them of traveling to those locations and the cost for them of traveling to those locations is lower than try to actually infiltrate the United States.
Right. I'm kind of curious, like, especially when like the interviews we've seen it where, like, put your hand in front of your face types of things, like, they could tell that something was off. But I sort of wonder again, like how rapidly this technology is developing. Like, I wonder how far are we away from that? Like, a couple of years, something like that, where, these sort of things aren't going to be useful to be able to identify it. I mean, do we have to have people come into the office for interviews now? Kind of what's the future look like? And how can you teach HR departments about this too? I mean, they're not real savvy on this stuff, right? Like they just go through how many interviews do they do in a day, right?
Right, right. Um, so let me address because you said a bunch of stuff there. So the first thing is the technology. So the technology is very good today at occlusion, and also lighting sources. So I'm gonna do this. I should have set up to like show you guys the deepfake. Maybe I could input one of the tools while we're here, but you see how the light, like I can illuminate my face. A lot of these deepfake tools, like that illumination will work against the fake face. And so like there are a bunch of different tools out there. They have different levels of quality, but like Rope Live, for example, is an open source project that's pretty sophisticated. There's a sort of commercial thing called Swap Face that's like really good. And so those the tools are pretty good. At least for face swapping. I think that one of the things that's difficult right now is like audio and video at the same time. So I think generally, there's two issues. There's two challenges for the attacker. One is audio and video at the same time is a little difficult to pull off. It's possible, but it requires coordinating different tools together. There isn't somebody out there with like that I know of with a tool that does all of it. And then the second thing is that you kind of have to look like the person you're deep faking. So if I'm going to impersonate somebody, and so it's one we talk a lot about, like if I'm just disguising my identity, that's really easy. I can just put on a different face and you won't know who I am. If I'm trying to be someone else because I'm engaged in social engineering, I need kind of the same hair, maybe the same facial shape. Like it, it's not very convincing if I look very, very different from that person. And so those two factors are limiting factors with respect to the kinds of social engineering attacks that we see. However, again, give it some time. You might expect both the tooling in terms of audio video coordination to improve and also the like technology to improve, where maybe fakes are more and more effective regardless of your appearance.
Hmm.
And I think that, but one of the corollaries there is that, especially for social engineering, is that voice-based social engineering is far easier. All I have to do is get a short sample of your voice. I can then emulate it. And if I can, so often we see like injected messages over WhatsApp or things like that, where people receive a voice message and then you play it and it sounds like the person. It's very convincing. And then you assume you're interacting with that person and you get taken for a ride there. And I think that as humans, that voice and the fact that it's the correct voice has a tendency to cause us to ignore subtle signs that it's not quite right. We
Hmm.
might People are really bad at rationalizing away the indicators that they should be latching on to, when there are other things going on that sort of reinforce for them that this is okay. So there's a little weirdness about it, but maybe he's just got a bad connection. And so that's one of the things. And so there's two recommendations at a high level that I have from a security standpoint. The first is, like I like applying kill chain thinking to the problem. That your process of like hiring a person is a multi-step process. It starts with maybe like, getting their resume in the first place. There's screening, there are interviews, there's like a I-9 document verification process. There is, maybe onboarding where you ship them a laptop. And then eventually they're an employee and they're working, they're in the network. Each one of these stages is an opportunity to detect these guys, and there's all kinds of good advice out there. CrowdStrike has published advice. DTech Systems has published advice. Microsoft has published advice. We, GetReal Systems, we have, or GetReal Security, we have published advice. There's a number of different guides out there. Sophos actually had a really interesting set of information that they published where they actually tried to organize and categorize some of the advice because there's tons of it out there. But it's really a matter of like trying to organize it and then thinking like in the how do you instrument each one of these stages so that you can like operationalize some of these indicators. And so maybe it's latency, maybe it's like, hey, can I check what Wi-Fi access points can be seen from this person's laptop, and does that map, if I check geographically to like global maps of Wi-Fi access points, does that look like their location, right? Do I see an IP KVM that's attached to their computer? Because often they don't even obfuscate the name of the device, right? So can I just look at the devices that are plugged in? But that's like once they're on my network, right? We want to catch them earlier on in the process. So what we were trying to do is instrument the video conference call. Can I get, minimally, like if you don't get help from me, get help somewhere, right? If you can get the logs, you could do some of the stuff that Splunk was talking about. But yeah, we're trying to get all the indicators, not just like the video and audio, but also the IP addresses they join the call from, maybe sometimes we get like the camera device name and other things like that, and we can analyze those things and determine whether or not there was an attack. I think that in dealing with so in order to get out there earlier on in the process, you have to work with your like HR department. You know, they are not computer security people. The people like managing these candidate relationships are usually not very technical. And so, this idea of coaching them to detect an attack, like you can try to do that, but you're really asking a lot. Like a recruiter's expertise is not security, right? And so I think you want to think about it more from a process standpoint, like, make sure they understand the issue. If you've experienced it in your organization, often the HR team is very sensitive to it. They just like it's not their profession. Can you set things up so that at least you're getting recordings of the calls? Can you set up again telemetry so you can monitor the calls? Can you validate resumes? So there's lots of indicators in a resume, right? The resume itself may have been generated by a resume generator. Is everything internally consistent in it? Are the ages of things like the LinkedIn profile and the GitHub profile consistent with the like? It's easier to like vet out candidates that are old versus like younger candidates, because older candidates have more of a footprint, and then you can go investigate that footprint and see if it seems reasonable, right? But if you've got so those are the kinds of things people are paying attention to. Like, does the greater internet footprint associated with this candidate align with what we would expect for someone at that stage of their career, and does it seem real, and does it seem internally consistent? And then one of the things we're working on is like, can I validate that the same person showed up at each stage of the interview, right? Does it seem to always be the same person? Because to your point, sometimes somebody else shows up for one of the stages, right? And it may be different people in that interview, so they don't know that it's not the same person. And so I don't know. That's a set of stuff. But there is a tremendous amount of advice out there, and I think the key thing is to try to organize your thinking around it so that you can look at these different stages and see what you can do at each stage to improve the process.
Yeah, you're talking about the kill chain and things, and then a lot of opportunities for detection. But it also seems like we also need to may have some visibility into a lot more of that process on the security side that maybe we didn't have before. So I mean, it sounds like we also maybe need to tie into like HR systems and and interview like Zoom logs and things like that might be helpful.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I'm also
So like so many people that like they don't realize that their video conference system is a surface area, right?
right.
So they're not collecting logs from it. like people are connecting to that thing from IP addresses. Are you checking that against your data, right?
Right.
And then your applicant tracking system. It's like this separate IT world that the HR team has that may or may not be like observed by the security operations team in the same way that they're observing the like firewalls and the IPS systems and the like what they consider to be the perimeter. And so yeah, I mean, I think increasingly like sorry about that. Increasingly the video conferencing system is a surface area and a perimeter that you have to watch.
Well, I wonder too. Is like since this is an attack vector, is this going to be considered in red teaming activities? So there
Hey,
you go.
look. I,
So pretty.
so let's see if this one is light responsive. See, it's light responsive. I don't know how
There.
good it is because this isn't my favorite tool, and it's watermarked, but it just happened to be easy for me to click on, right? And so anyway, is it good at occlusion?
A little bit.
Not great, right?
If you
Honestly, I
like
think that would
increase the
pass.
quality or
Other than the
something, maybe.
watermark, I think that would pass most sniff checks for most folk, which is impressive.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right, though, that real-time video is plausible, real-time audio, very much so. Together in sync is difficult. That said, how long like the age-old trope that AI is the worst it's ever going to be. If a company makes a decision of this is our standard for it, how long does that last as of now? Should they plan to reevaluate in 6 months? I feel like a year is too long at this point, but they
Oh,
also
that's
need to get
fair.
actual work
Really
done too.
interesting. Yeah. Well, I mean, one thing that is going in your favor is that some of these like deepfake tools are, let me say this. We talk about the face swaps, which I just showed you, and I talked about audio voice changers. The thing that I think is going to advance more rapidly than either of those things is AI, like fully AI generated avatars. We call them
Yeah,
AI
video
avatars.
avatars.
Yeah.
HeyGen is a decent example if people want to take a look at them.
HeyGen's very good. And they increasingly so like the things that I've seen where the AI avatar is actually driven by me in real time are kind of poor. Like the lip syncing is poor and the audio synchronization is poor, but like fully generated just videos that you play, they're incredibly good. And so in a context where like that would be sufficient for social engineering, and there are some, those things can work. Increasingly, these things are like agentic driven. So like they're run by an LLM and they can have interactive conversations with you. And so, we've seen audio fully like just audio based like clearly LLM driven social engineering agents where like it calls you and it interacts with you and it knows in its prompting like what it how to react to different things that you might say to it and it's really trying to get you to do a specific thing. I think that some of these platforms like HeyGen is a pretty sort of above the board platform, and so they're trying to do things to prevent the use of their platform for crime or abuse. The question is, so you get into like how good are those controls, and are there people who are still successfully using these platforms despite the fact that the platforms are trying to stop them? And then also, are there other platforms out there that provide effective capability that are not quite as good with their sort of their security controls or their abuse protections, and that's the sort of stuff that's going on. But yeah, I mean, I think AI avatars because there's more of a general business case for them. Like face swapping is people. I don't know why people built this technology in the first place. I think they just think it's fun. But like AI avatars are something to have real business drivers behind them, and so that's going to cause that stuff to advance really, really quickly.
Yeah, I'm sort of curious about like red teaming. Like, do you think that, in scope, do you think that like red team, like when they do a penetration test, is this going to be, within scope? If I can get myself hired within your company as a red teamer,
Oh
right?
yeah.
I'm
No,
kind of
no,
curious. Have you seen
no,
that?
so I'm aware of people that do and I'll say Bishop Fox does pretty good like red team exercises that are social engineering oriented. And this guy Brandon Kovacs has some great videos on the internet where he talks about his deepfake setup and he has the audio video coordination stuff working, but he's put a lot of effort into his setup to get it working really well. And they've used those effectively in engagements, and they're targeting like can I talk the CFO into making a financial transaction? Can I call the help desk and get some of these credentials reset, right? Can I call the front desk and get physical access to the building because I talked to the front desk into adding someone to the list, right? um, those are like sort of traditional red team kind of activities. I agree with you that like red teaming your HR process is a fantastic idea, right? Because again, that's definitely a demonstrated sort of problem that's happening right now, where these people are getting jobs, and so that's certainly one way to look at it, is to see if you can get a fake candidate through the process, depending upon the volume of hiring that your organization is doing. But I also think you could just sort of sit down and look at the process that your HR team goes through and identify places to increase the amount of controls that you probably have.
I think it's a decent way to stand. So the big problem, people do email-based phishing because you don't have to talk to people, frankly, and also because
Yeah.
it can scale better. You can use the exact same approach on many, many people. Do 100 emails in, and then you have a percentage. It's really easy to calculate. I am interested in voice-only agents for voice-based phishing over the phone, and the fact that it can scale that way. There's always the concern of how many hours of employee time are you burning on that, and how upset are people going to be? Because I try very hard to have phishing emails that, regardless of whether or not you fall for it, you're not upset. So it's one more brain dead email from IT. But any
Oh,
any
that's interesting.
comments
Can you
on
do
threading that
Yeah,
needle?
no, could you do phishing? That's a cool idea. I haven't thought through like how easy it would be to build like a phone based, like there's a set of things you want, right? You got to get everybody's phone number, so you probably like need to have a little bit of code that's going to scrape that out of AD, and then it's easy to like have to integrate these things into voice calling, and then you know what I mean? Like the you can drive them with an LLM, so you can have some interesting sort of like interactive stuff going on there where they call the employee and they try to interact with them. But I know people are so, man, I get so many spam calls, like I don't answer them anymore. Like I don't know, there must be some people out there that
Yeah,
are
but if they
vulnerable to
call
getting
like
spam
your
calls.
work number
Yeah,
or your
you have
personal
to
cell
answer
phone
it.
that
That's
people
right.
can really quickly OSINT, and it's standardized, hi, this is IT. We know you're having problems with Outlook today. Here's the solution. Let me walk you through it. We've all gotten brain dead calls from
Oh
IT
yeah.
before.
Yeah.
And that way you can standardize the approach, which is kind of important for gathering a metric.
And
I'm
if you
very
sound
interested
like
in the
somebody in that
percentage
team,
being probably
yeah.
much higher, right? Rachel Toback gets a much higher response rate than no before.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah. I mean, I'm also like an area that I'm concerned about. I mentioned it briefly, like beyond hiring is just like the IT department itself and their inbound call process. Because like there's been a lot of credential reset incidents over the past few years. There have been very prominent ones like Marks and Spencer this summer. But lots of people don't even have the level of process. Marks and Spencer was doing callbacks. Lots of people don't even do callbacks, right? If you if you know an employee's home address, and a little bit of personal information, you may be able to call into the company and get their credential reset. And you see this stuff happening. And I think that one of the recommendations, one of the things that's happening both on hiring and on credential reset is you're seeing the adoption of this stuff called IDV, where it's like you show an ID and you take a selfie and they compare them, and it's sort of adopted from banking, where like you've got to use those things to get a bank account. Those things are heavily targeted by deepfakes in the finance industry. Like there's a huge market for KYC validated bank accounts that you can resell on the black market to people that are laundering money. And the same tool set can be used to attack these workplace systems. And it's really it's sort of AI versus AI, basically, right? It's an arms race where these IDV systems are, there's no human on the call. It's trying to automatically determine whether or not you are who you say you are. If your AI is better than it, you're going to win that challenge. So, I think we have to I don't think that we've rested on the correct process for resetting somebody's credential at this point. I think that there's more work that needs to be done to figure out how to fully verify that you are talking to the person, especially if again they're in Montana. There's no way they can fly into an office to get a new credential from you. They need back in right now because they got work to do, and you've got to make a determination about whether or not they are who they're supposed to be.
Oh, that's great. Well, hey, thank you, Tom. This was really, really insightful. I wish we had more time to talk about this,
Yeah,
but
same. This was fun. So
yeah,
always
I want
happy
to.
to be on the Lima Charlie calls, and happy Friday, everybody. I hope you have a great weekend.
Yeah, and Happy New Year to everyone. This is our first Defender Friday for the new year. And yeah, looking forward to more of these. So we will see you all next week at the same time, same day. And we'll see you all. You guys all have a great weekend. See you all later.
Bye.
Goodbye, friends.